My world crumbled under the fluorescent lights of the university auditorium. On stage, bathed in the glow of the projector, stood Jin, my best friend. He was presenting our final project, the one we'd spent sleepless nights developing together. Except he was presenting it as his own. My name was nowhere. He smirked, catching my eye from the stage, a flicker of cold, calculated triumph in his gaze. The professor praised his solo genius, and the room erupted in applause. My heart felt like it had been scooped out with a jagged spoon. Later, in the hallway, I confronted him, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and hurt. He just laughed, a cruel, ugly sound. "Look at you, Kai," he sneered, poking my substantial stomach. "You're slow, you're lazy. You would have just dragged me down." His words were the final hammer blows, shattering the last fragments of my self-worth. I fled, the sound of his and others' laughter chasing me down the corridor. I locked myself in my small, dark apartment, the shame of physical weight pressing down on me. The mirror showed a stranger, a young man with a kind but defeated face, framed by messy black hair, his once bright brown eyes now dull with despair. His body was soft and round, hidden beneath a stretched-out gray hoodie and black sweatpants. This was my rock bottom. As I stared at my own pathetic reflection, a sharp chime cut through the silence. A brilliant blue screen materialized in the air before me, humming with a strange, ancient energy. Dino evolution system initializing. Host detected, Kai. Condition, betrayed, despairing, optimal candidate for radical transformation. My eyes widened in disbelief, thinking it was a hallucination brought on by stress. New quest. Lose your first 5 pounds. Reward. Unlock primordial power stage 1. The path to vengeance is paved with your own weakness. Every pound you lose will be converted. Every ounce of fat you burn will fuel the fire of a predator. I stared at the screen, then back at my reflection. Vengeance. Power. A dangerous spark ignited in the ashes of my despair. I had nothing left to lose but the weight that was already killing me. A small, humorless smile touched my lips for the first time in what felt like forever. "All right," I whispered to the empty room. "Let's see what happens." The moment the system confirmed my 5-pound weight loss, a strange energy surged through me. It wasn't a painful jolt, but a warm, thrumming power that seemed to awaken dormant parts of my DNA. My skin tingled, and my muscles, buried deep beneath layers of fat, felt like they were contracting and tightening. Primordial Power Stage 1 unlocked. Compsognathus. Agility +5. Perception +3. New skill, Minor Shift, Compsognathus? The tiny chicken-sized dinosaur. I felt a pang of disappointment. I was hoping for something a little more intimidating. But then, the system prompted me to activate Minor Shift. Curiosity overriding my slight letdown, I focused my intent as instructed. The sensation was bizarre. It felt less like my body was changing and more like a phantom limb was extending from it. I watched, mesmerized, as my hands shimmered with a faint, reptilian green aura. My fingernails momentarily appeared sharper, almost like tiny black claws, before the effect faded. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it was real. Over the next few days, I pushed myself harder. Every calorie burned, every drop of sweat, was an investment in my new reality. I experimented with my newfound agility. Before, I was clumsy, always bumping into things. Now, I could move around my cluttered apartment with a newfound grace, dodging furniture with an instinct I never possessed. My perception was sharper, too. I could hear the soft scuttling of a spider in the corner of the room, see the individual dust motes dancing in a sliver of sunlight. One evening, while practicing, I tripped over a stray textbook. Bracing for the usual clumsy, painful impact, I instead found myself twisting in midair. My body moved on its own, a primal instinct taking over. I landed on my feet, crouched low to the ground like a predator, my heart pounding with adrenaline. The green aura flickered around my hands again, more defined this time. I looked at them, then slowly stood up, a genuine smile spreading across my face. This wasn't just about getting revenge on Jin anymore. This was about rediscovering myself. The system gave me a goal, a tangible reward for every ounce of effort. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope. I was still overweight, still the same Kai on the outside. But inside, a dormant beast was starting to stir. A beast that was getting stronger with every pound I lost. And I was just getting started. Life settled into a new, grueling rhythm: study, exercise, healthy eating, and system training. Another 10 pounds melted away, and the system rewarded me with an upgrade. The Compsognathus agility was useful, but it was time for something more. Weight loss goal achieved, 15 pounds total. Evolving to Primordial Power Stage 2, Deinonychus. Strength plus 10, Agility plus 10, Stamina plus 8. Skill? Minor Shift, evolved to Partial Shift, new skill unlocked. Predator's Rush, the surge of power this time was far more intense. I felt a wiry strength infusing my muscles, a lean predator's power that coiled beneath my skin. Activating Partial Shift, I watched in awe as the transformation was far more pronounced. My hands were covered in a shimmering, scale-like green energy. 3-inch, obsidian-sharp claws extended from my fingertips, looking lethally real. A similar energy enveloped my feet, and I felt the phantom sensation of a single, sickle-like claw on each foot. My physical appearance was changing, too. The puffiness in my face was receding, revealing a stronger jawline. My body, while still carrying extra weight, was starting to look more solid than soft. The defining moment came unexpectedly. I was walking across the university campus, heading to the library, when a sound like tearing fabric ripped through the sky. A swirling vortex of black and purple energy opened up above the central plaza. Panic erupted. Screams echoed across the campus as students ran in every direction. From the vortex, grotesque creatures began to pour out. They looked like mangy, oversized wolves with 6 legs and glowing red eyes. A dungeon break. I had only read about these things online. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was real. One of the wolf creatures lunged at a girl who had tripped and fallen nearby. It was Leah, a quiet girl from my programming class. Time seemed to slow down. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to be the person I used to be. But the thrumming power under my skin, the phantom claws on my hands, urged me forward. I didn't even think. I activated Predator's Rush. The world became a blur of green as I shot forward with impossible speed. I reached Leah in a split second, scooping her up in one arm just as the creature's drooling jaws snapped shut where her head had been. I didn't stop, skidding to a halt a safe distance away. Leah stared at me, her eyes wide with terror and confusion, not recognizing the boy from her class in this sudden, decisive savior. I looked down at my hands. The green, scaly aura was flickering, my claws phasing in and out of existence. The monster turned, its glowing red eyes locking onto me. I had just saved someone. And a 6-legged wolf from another dimension wanted to eat me. My new life was about to get a lot more complicated. The 6-legged wolf creature growled, circling me slowly. Its red eyes were filled with a primal hunger I now understood. It saw me as prey. I glanced back at Leah, she was scrambling away, finally coming to her senses. Good. I didn't want any witnesses for what I was about to do. My heart hammered in my chest, a drumbeat of fear and exhilaration. This was my first real fight. No more shadowboxing in my apartment. The monster lunge. Predator's Rush kicked in instinctively. I sidestepped the attack with blinding speed, the creature's claws scraping the pavement where I'd just been standing. It was fast, but I was faster. I didn't give it time to recover. I darted in, swiping with my right hand. The green energy claws connected with the creature's flank. They sliced through its tough hide like it was wet paper, leaving 3 deep, glowing green gashes. The monster yelped in pain and fury, whipping around to snap at me. I danced back, my movements fluid and efficient. Every pound I had lost, every agonizing workout, was paying off in this deadly ballet. The pain in my muscles was gone, replaced by a clean, burning fire of exertion. I could feel the system analyzing the creature, feeding me information about its weak spots. The neck, the joints, the underbelly. It lunged again, more recklessly this time. I ducked under its snapping jaws and drove my clawed left hand upwards into its soft belly. The impact was solid. The monster shrieked, a high-pitched sound that grated on the ears. It thrashed wildly, trying to dislodge me, but I held on. With a final, desperate surge of strength, I channeled more energy into my claws and ripped them sideways. The creature convulsed and then fell limp, dissolving into black motes of light that faded into the air. Silence. I stood there, breathing heavily, my energy claws slowly receding. My knuckles were scraped, and my adrenaline was sky high, but I was unharmed. I had just killed a monster from another world. A shaky laugh escaped my lips. It was terrifying and, I had to admit, absolutely incredible. More shrieks from across the plaza reminded me the fight wasn't over. Other creatures were still terrorizing the campus. Just as I was about to rush towards the next closest monster, a team of uniformed people arrived. They wore tactical gear and carried weapons that glowed with a faint blue light. Hunters. They moved with professional efficiency, engaging the remaining monsters. A man in a long black coat, who seemed to be their leader, noticed me. His sharp eyes scanned the area, saw the spot where my monster had dissolved, and then settled on me. He walked over, his expression unreadable. "That was some impressive footwork," he said, his voice calm and level. "You're not registered," it wasn't a question. I didn't know what to say. I just reacted, I stammered. He stared at me for a long moment, his gaze seeming to pierce right through me. "We need to have a talk," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. My secret was out. The man's name was Kato. He was a high-ranking official in the Hunters Association. We sat in the back of his silent, luxurious car as the city lights streaked past. He didn't interrogate me. Instead, he explained. He told me about hunters, people who awakened unique abilities, and the dungeons that had been appearing with increasing frequency. He explained that my powers were unusual. Most hunters awaken with a single, definable skill set. Elemental manipulation, physical enhancement, weapon mastery, he said, his sharp eyes fixed on me. You, however, seem to be transforming. It's a class we have no data on. I decided to be honest, at least partially. I told him it was an ability that grew stronger as I got into better physical shape. I left out the part about the blue screen and the dinosaur names. Kato offered me a choice: join the association, receive training and support, and use my powers to protect people. Or be classified as an unregistered anomaly, to be monitored and, if necessary, neutralized. It wasn't much of a choice. My life as a normal student was over the moment that portal opened. I agreed. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The association set me up with a new, secure apartment and a rigorous training schedule. I was no longer just losing weight, I was building a weapon. Another 20 pounds vanished. My body was now lean and corded with muscle, a stark contrast to the soft, undefined form I'd had before. The system rewarded my progress. Weight loss goal achieved, 35 pounds total. Evolving to Primordial Power Stage 3. Allosaurus. Strength plus 30. Agility plus 20. Durability plus 25. Skill, Partial Shift, evolved to Full Limb Shift. New skill unlocked. Savage Bite. The power boost was immense. Full Limb Shift allowed me to transform my arms completely into powerful, scaly green reptilian limbs, ending in devastating claws. The Savage Bite manifested as a phantom jaw of green energy that would snap forward from my face when I willed it. One day, at the association training grounds, I ran into a familiar, unwelcome face. It was Jin. He was dressed in flashy, cheap-looking hunter gear, a smug look on his face. He'd awakened as a hunter, too, with some minor fire manipulation ability. He was showing off for a group of novice hunters, creating small, sputtering fireballs in his palm. When he saw me, his smirk widened. Well. Look what the cat dragged in, he said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. Kai, lose a little weight? Did your mommy finally put you on a diet? His cronies laughed. The old Kai would have shrunk away, burned by the shame. But I wasn't the old Kai. I just stood there, my expression calm. Still stealing other people's work to get by, Jin? I asked, my voice even. His face flushed with anger. You want to go, fatty? He snarled, a fist-sized flame igniting in his hand. "I really don't think you do," I replied. He threw the fireball. It was slow and clumsy. I sidestepped it easily, the heat washing over me harmlessly. Before he could react, I used a fraction of my predator's rush speed, closing the distance between us in an instant. I grabbed his wrist, my grip like iron. The fire in his hand sputtered and died. He stared at me, his eyes wide with shock and pain. He couldn't believe my strength. "Listen closely," I whispered, my voice dangerously low. "The next time you open your mouth to talk to me, I'll break this hand. And you won't be able to light so much as a birthday candle ever again." I let him go, shoving him back. He stumbled and fell to the ground, looking up at me with something I hadn't seen in his eyes before. Fear. It was a small victory, but it was sweeter than I could have imagined. My first official mission was to clear a low-ranked E-gate, a nascent dungeon that had stabilized inside an abandoned warehouse district. Kato assigned me to a solo mission to properly gauge my abilities. The air inside the warehouse was cold and smelled of damp concrete and something wild and alien. The system interface flared to life. Entering dungeon, Goblin Den. Objective: eliminate the Goblin Chief. The interior of the warehouse had been twisted into a crude, cavernous space, with flickering torches casting long, dancing shadows. Small, green-skinned creatures with pointed ears and crude weapons scurried in the gloom. Goblins. One of them spotted me and let out a shrill cry. In seconds, I was surrounded by a dozen of them. They were weak, but their numbers were a problem. An old fear, the fear of being cornered and overwhelmed, pricked at me. But I smothered it with cold resolve. I was not the boy who got cornered in the school hallway anymore. I was a predator. I activated full limb shift, my arms transforming into their powerful reptilian state. The goblins hesitated for a fraction of a second, their primitive brains trying to process what they were seeing. That was all the time I needed. I exploded into motion, a whirlwind of green scales and black claws. Predators rush, let me move between them like a phantom. A claw swipe decapitated one. A powerful kick sent another flying into a stone wall with a sickening crunch. I used my savage bite on a particularly large goblin that tried to hit me with a club, its spectral jaws shearing through the monster and its weapon. It wasn't a fight, it was a culling. In less than a minute, the chamber was silent except for my own breathing. The bodies of the goblins dissolved into black dust, leaving behind small, glowing stones, monocrystals. I pressed deeper into the dungeon, navigating the crude tunnels. The system guided me, highlighting traps and hidden passages. It felt like a video game, but the danger was very real. The weight loss continued, accelerated by the constant, intense physical exertion of dungeon crawling. I was shedding the last vestiges of my old self, both physically and mentally. Every monster I defeated, every trap I dodged, honed my instincts. Finally, I reached a large, open cavern. At its center, on a makeshift throne of scrap metal and bones, sat a goblin easily twice the size of the others. It wore crude iron armor and held a massive, notched axe. The Goblin Chief. It stood up, letting out a roar that shook the cavern, and pointed its axe at me. It wasn't just bigger, it felt different. A palpable aura of pressure washed over me. This would be a real test of my new power. This was my boss fight. The Goblin Chief's charge was surprisingly fast for its size. It swung its massive axe in a wide, horizontal arc aimed at taking my head off. I didn't try to block it. Instead, I dropped low, sliding across the dusty stone floor. The wind from the axe whistled just inches above my head. As I slid past its legs, I lashed out with my transformed claws, raking them across the back of its knee. The chief roared in pain and stumbled, its armor deflecting the worst of the blow but not all of it. It spun around, swinging its axe wildly. I kept my distance, using my superior agility to weave between its clumsy but powerful attacks. This was a battle of attrition. It was strong and tough, but it was also slow and predictable. I just had to wear it down. I darted in again, landing a solid punch with my scaled fist on its side, then darted back out before it could retaliate. The beast was getting frustrated, its attacks becoming more desperate. It suddenly slammed the butt of its axe into the ground, causing the floor to crack. A shockwave of energy erupted outwards. I was too close to dodge completely. The force caught me, sending me tumbling through the air. I crashed into the cavern wall, the impact knocking the wind out of me. Pain flared in my back and ribs. My reptilian arms faded, returning to normal as my concentration broke. The goblin chief grinned, a horrific sight, and lumbered towards me. My body ached. I was still too fragile. I needed more power, more defense. As the chief raised its axe for the finishing blow, a desperate thought crossed my mind. System, I pleaded internally, I need an evolution. Something tough. Something that can take a hit. My body was screaming in protest, but I pushed myself to my feet. And then, the system responded. Emergency conditions met. Mid-combat evolution protocol initiated. Analyzing host's intent, defense. Durability. Immovability, optimal match found, Ankylosaurus. New skill unlocked. Carapace plating, a surge of energy, different from before, flooded my body. It was a grounding, earthy power. As the axe began its descent, a shimmering green, hexagonal pattern flared to life across my back and shoulders. It solidified into a thick, spectral armor plate, like the shell of some prehistoric turtle. The axe slammed into my back. Instead of the crunch of bone I expected, there was a deafening clang, as if steel had struck steel. The axe bounced off, its blade chipped. The goblin chief stared in utter disbelief. I stood my ground, the spectral carapace on my back glowing with power. A slow, predatory smile spread across my face. My turn, I said, my voice a low growl. The goblin chief staggered back, its chest plate shattered. It looked down at the hole in its armor, then back at me, its small, hateful eyes filled with confusion. I didn't give it a chance to recover. The defensive power of the Ankylosaurus was incredible, but the Allosaurus was my weapon of choice. I lunged again, my movements a furious barrage of strikes. Each punch, each claw swipe, was empowered by a new level of confidence. The spectral carapace on my back faded, its job done, allowing me to move with more agility. The goblin chief was on the defensive now, barely able to parry my relentless assault with its heavy axe. I ducked under a desperate swing and rammed my shoulder into its gut, driving it back. Then, I unleashed a full-power, savage bite. The phantom jaws of green energy, larger and more defined than ever before, materialized and snapped shut around the goblin chief's head. There was a sickening crunch of energy and matter colliding. The chief's body went rigid for a second, then slumped to the floor, lifeless. Like the others, it dissolved into a cloud of black motes, but this time, the light it left behind was brighter. A large, perfectly cut mana crystal and a rusty iron key lay on the floor. Goblin chief defeated, dungeon cleared. Exiting in 60 seconds. I stood there in the silent cavern, my chest heaving, every muscle in my body singing with exhaustion and triumph. I picked up the crystal and the key, and just as the system timer hit 0, the world around me dissolved, and I found myself back in the dusty, mundane warehouse. Sunlight streamed through the grimy windows. It was over. Kato and a medical team were waiting for me outside. He looked at my torn clothes and bruised body, then gave a single, curt nod. Report, he said. I gave him the rundown, omitting the mid-battle evolution. I just said I had a defensive ability I hadn't revealed yet. His eyes lingered on me, sharp and analytical as always, but he didn't press the issue. My performance review was exceptional. They had monitored my vital signs and energy output remotely. Clearing an E-gate solo on a first run was rare for a new hunter. My rank was immediately promoted, and I was given access to better resources, better training, and more information. I learned about the different types of gates, the politics between hunter guilds, and the looming threat of S-rank dungeons, world-ending catastrophes that had thankfully remained dormant for years. My life had completely changed. I was no longer Kai, the overweight joke. I was Kai, a promising hunter with a unique and powerful ability. My physique now reflected my power. I was lean, athletic, and walked with a confidence that was entirely new to me. The fat was gone, replaced by dense muscle. Every pound I lost had indeed become a ton of power. But as I looked at my reflection, a young man with messy black hair, sharp brown eyes, and a body honed by combat, I knew this was just the beginning. The system had bigger plans for me than just clearing goblin dens. And the world had bigger monsters than I could possibly imagine. The peace was short-lived. An alarm blared through the entire Hunters Association headquarters, a sound I'd been trained to recognize and dread. It was the highest level alert. A red gate. An uncleared dungeon had broken, not in some abandoned district, but in the middle of downtown. Chaos was erupting. On the main command center screen, live footage showed a scene from a nightmare. A beast of colossal size, a chimera of rock and magma, was tearing through the city streets. Buildings crumbled under its assault. It was an A-rank boss, a creature far beyond what the city's regular hunter patrols could handle. Kato was already there, coordinating the evacuation and the initial defense. Every available A-rank and B-rank hunter was being deployed. I was officially a C rank, but Kato's voice came over my comms unit, sharp and direct. Kai. Downtown. Now. Your mobility is our best bet for civilian rescue. Do not engage the boss. I repeat, do not engage. I was already moving. Using Predator's Rush, in short bursts, I navigated the rooftops, the city unfolding below me in a panorama of smoke and screams. When I arrived, the scene was worse than on screen. The magma golem was immense, a walking volcano. Hunters, brave and powerful in their own right, looked like insects buzzing around it. Their attacks, blasts of ice and light, sizzled uselessly against its molten rock hide. I saw a group of civilians trapped in a tilting bus, directly in the path of the golem's lumbering advance. Without hesitation, I leapt down, a streak of green. I wrenched the jammed bus door off its hinges and began pulling people out, a blur of motion. Go. Run, I yelled, pointing them towards the evacuation routes. Just as I pulled the last child out, the golem swung a massive, molten arm. It wasn't aimed at me, but at the building behind the bus, intending to cut off the escape path. I had to stop it. Suddenly, a figure stepped in front of me, thrusting his hands forward. I'll protect you, he yelled. It was Jin. He created a pathetic wall of fire, barely 3 feet high, between us and the descending molten fist. It was the most idiotic, suicidal, and pointlessly theatrical gesture I had ever seen. He was trying to play the hero in a situation that was hopelessly beyond his league. The golem's fist wouldn't even notice his little flame wall. It would crush him, me, and the escaping civilians in one catastrophic blow. There was no time to think. No time to weigh options. Kato's orders screamed in my head, do not engage. But letting these people die, letting Jin die for his own stupid arrogance, was not an option. I shoved him out of the way. Get them out of here. I roared. And then I turned to face the mountain of falling rock and fire. System, I thought, my heart pounding with a strange calm. I've lost all the weight. I've done everything you asked. It's time. Give me everything you've got. The system responded instantly. Final weight loss threshold reached. All excess mass converted. Final evolution unlocked. Tyrannosaurus Rex. Activating Apex skill. Tyrant's Dominion. Power unlike anything I had ever felt erupted from me. It wasn't just in my limbs or my back, it was a fundamental rewriting of my existence. The green energy around me solidified, growing with terrifying speed. It wasn't just an aura anymore, it was a construct. Towering above me, surrounding my physical body like a suit of divine armor, the spectral form of a Tyrannosaurus Rex roared into existence. It was immense, easily half the size of the magma golem, a being of pure, primordial energy. Its silent, spiritual roar shook the very foundations of the city. The golem's molten fist, which would have ended everything, slammed into the spectral T-Rex's head. The construct didn't even budge. My human body, safe within the heart of the energy avatar, felt no impact. I was the pilot. The Tyrant King had answered my call. From the command center, from the streets, from the rooftops, everyone stopped. Hunters, civilians, Jin, they all stared in stunned silence at the titanic battle of monsters that had just begun. Tyrant's Dominion wasn't just a shield. It was a weapon. I moved, and the spectral T-Rex moved with me. I threw a punch, and the avatar swung its colossal head, smashing it into the golem's chest. The sound was like a thunderclap, and the golem staggered back, molten rock flaking from its body. It roared in fury and swung its other arm. I made a grabbing motion, and the T-Rex's spectral jaws opened wide, catching the golem's arm and biting down. With a twist of my torso, the energy construct tore the arm clean off. Magma spewed from the wound, hardening into obsidian on the cold street. The golem was wounded, enraged. It opened its mouth, and a torrent of liquid fire spewed forth. I raised my arms, and the spectral T-Rex braced itself, taking the full force of the magma stream on its chest. The energy construct shimmered but held strong. I walked forward, my avatar pushing through the river of fire, closing the distance. This had to end now. I channeled every last ounce of my will, every memory of the shame and pain, every victory and every pound lost, into one final attack. I drew my right arm back, and the spectral T-Rex mimicked the motion, opening its devastating jaws as wide as they could go. This was more than savage bite. This was apex predator's end. I thrust my arm forward. The T-Rex's head lunged, its jaws clamping down on the magma golem's torso. An explosion of emerald light consumed the world. When it faded, the magma golem was gone. Not dissolving into motes, but utterly annihilated. The street was silent. The spectral Tyrannosaurus Rex around me faded away, leaving me standing alone in the center of a massive crater. I looked at my hands, then at the saved civilians, at the awestruck hunters, at Jin, who was staring at me as if seeing a god. The betrayal, the pain, the loneliness. It had all been fuel. It had forged me into this. I was no longer defined by the weight I had lost, but by the power I had gained. And for the first time, looking out at the city I had just saved, I felt like I finally knew my own worth.